So now, of course, political terms are, they are very divisive. We have a lot of just word salad thrown out nowadays, whether it be people mistakenly, conservatives mistakenly calling them, or people trying to say that they're liberal by calling themselves a classical liberal, which is not today's liberal. It's essentially a libertarian. But what we're going to be looking at here, because this is something that's extremely important, by the way, it is really important, because I think Bernie Sanders makes this big mistake as well of, when he talks about him being a socialist or believing in democratic socialism. It's a big mistake because Bernie Sanders is not a democratic socialist. He's not a socialist. He is a social democrat. Now, I've made a video, outlining this, but I think it's important that we get these political terms as correct as possible. Now, what you're going to be seeing here is Kyle Kulinski. He's going to be saying that he's either a social democrat or a democratic socialist.
I don't think, property rights are inherently evil or bad or wrong. I'm in favor of a regulated version of it. I'm like a democratic socialist or social democrat. So like a libertarian leftist. Libertarian on social issues, leftist on economic issues. Very much a social democrat or a democratic socialist. Somewhere in that ballpark.
So it is very important that we don't mix these two up, because the problem here is people wouldn't be able to tell, your average person won't be able to tell you the difference between socialism and communism. And so what you're talking about is people don't really know what the fuck they're talking about. General, average person is not going to know what the fuck you're talking about when you start talking about political terms, especially when you start talking about the different, because there's so many different, layers of being left wing. So, you have your most tame of being a social democrat, but then you have much more for the left things, like being an actual socialist or a democratic socialist or an anarcho-syndicalist or an anarchist altogether. Now, what we're talking about here, I want to make sure that this is very clear, okay? Those two are extremely different things, and I want to tell you that Kyle Kulinski is not a democratic socialist. He is a social democrat. Now, what is democratic socialism? Democratic socialism is socialism with the democratic form of government. So you're talking about socialism, you have, the workers owning the means of industry, essentially the workers owning industry. So you have worker co-ops. So I don't think he's for that. I'm pretty sure he's not for that. In fact, I'm 99.9999% sure that he's not for that. And it's important that we get these terms very correct, because when people start calling Bernie Sanders a socialist, it becomes a problem, because Bernie Sanders is not a socialist. He's a social democrat, which is super tame. That is the norm. Mixed economies are the norm in the industrialized world, because you have to have, you have capitalism, and then you have to have, accountability and just regulation, but most importantly, a social safety net, obviously, is the most important part. But please don't mistake these terms, because people fuck this up, and your average person isn't going to know what the difference between democratic socialism and social democracy is.